taking the time this morning to come to our session about home loans. And today we are going to be talking about who is leading in the home loan sector worldwide, and we'll be looking at a number of different components of the different programs that we are running globally. Firstly, my name is Jared Farrell. I am a senior client advisor here in Global Reviews. I'm also the head of product, and I'm delighted to be sharing results with you across programs that we are running in Australia, New Zealand, in the UK, and also further afield with brands that we've looked at in places like Singapore, South Africa, and America too. This is a short webinar. We really only have 30 minutes, and so there's lots to cover. So what we'll do is at the end, I will take any questions that anybody might have, and hopefully we'll have some content for everybody here, which will be of interest to them that they can take away and will be something that they can apply to their everyday jobs. So without further ado, I will get started. Some of you will know who we are, and for those of you who don't, Global Reviews has been in operation since around 2001. We work in 25 different industries across the globe, and some of the brand names you'll be familiar with on screen in front of you. We work with some very, very large brands in many different industries, and we really specialize in areas where there is a considered journey online, and in particular where there is some form of transaction that is taking place. It may be a quote, it may be an application form. We look at the early start of the journey in terms of discover. We also looked at consider, and then when people are trying to act online to purchase a product from someone like you. Finally, we do research in the area of member services and secure member login environment and bespoke. But today, what we are going to be talking about is really mostly that area of a person looking for a provider which meets their needs in the home loan sector, and how they compare and make decisions between different providers and what home loan brands are doing the best at really meeting the needs of prospective customers when it comes to trying to choose a home loan provider which best suits their needs. So many of the brands you will be familiar with, so across multiple different industries. Our methodologies mean that we pick up 95%, the issues that 95% of your customers will experience when they try and buy from you online, and that is through a mixed methodology approach, which I will go through at the very end of this session. And just to talk about some of the things that we have done in home loans in 2017 so far already, we have spoken to 1,200 home loan seekers across multiple different territories, and we have asked them to complete usability tasks on 24 different brands internationally. Just to put that into context, an average usability study would be anywhere from 5 to 15 people, and so we're doing usability studies in this industry alone with 1,200 people, and on an annual basis we're doing around 50,000 usability tasks across multiple different markets. So we certainly have a huge amount of data, and our methodologies are very robust. Okay, so without further ado, what are we going to talk about today? So I'd like to talk about lots of different types of things, and then to bring it all together at the end in terms of the way forward for brands operating in a digital environment, in terms of meeting the needs of people who are seeking a home loan. So first of all, what is the approach that we should take to understanding how prospective home loan customers look for a provider like you? And when I say prospective home loan customers, I'm also talking about those ones who are maybe not a current customer of another financial product which you are currently offering. So we're really going to be looking at that piece around if they're going out into the marketplace and we're not taking into consideration, well, we do talk about it, but the product really is that piece of if they went looking tomorrow, who would they find the most attractive and who would they choose? So we will talk about that. We will talk about the things which drive them to choose one provider over another. We are aware that things like trust and brand relationship is critical in a high involvement product like this. But there are other elements, product attributes, which are critical to these people when it comes to comparing different providers, different types of home loan options, and making a decision of one provider over another. How do we optimize the journey to meet their needs that matters most? This is a very interesting industry from that point of view, because someone starts thinking about their first home loan maybe 7 years out from when they actually might purchase their first house or first apartment or whatever that first property is. Now that 7 years can vary obviously from different industries and then also different segments and groups based on socio-demographics. But the concept really is that they start from a long time out. And then when it goes to remortgaging or looking for other types of finance which may be related to their home, the decision making changes. The different types of information that they're seeking changes. Their search behavior changes. And so understanding the customer is critical in terms of that consumer pathway. And so I do want to talk about that a little bit. And so then this 24 home loan brands worldwide that we looked at, and we had people completing tasks. Who's leading in helping prospective customers to find the best home loan available to them? And so it'll be interesting to see what you guys think of the results that we have that come out in terms of the top leader worldwide. I think that the result may surprise some in terms of some of the stories that we're going to pull out. So how should success be measured is finally one of the key things that I would like to talk about in terms of home loans, but then also in terms of usability and when it comes to designing the best customer experiences for people when our prospective home loan buyers, and then also, in the financial sector in general. Because the idea is that a lot of the methodologies that we are talking about today are in the area of usability and customer experience, and we're also talking about features and functions that are provided in terms of service, but really we need hard commercial metrics in terms of measuring how successful you are in comparison to your competitors at attracting people to choose you over somebody else. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that as well, which means that we will also be talking about the product. So again, some of you may be familiar with the chart that we have on screen in front of us. And what this really is looking at conversion journey through the actual pathway when someone is choosing a provider. And this is how we do it in Global Reviews. I'm taking two particular brands. I'm taking Commonwealth Bank in Australia and I'm taking HSBC in the UK. And the reason why I've chosen these two banks is because these are the top two banks in the 24 banks that we measured that are delivering the best optimum digital experience for customers and the ones who are making it easiest to buy from them. So the different components in terms of the scores that are on screen in front of you. First of all, we measure unprompted brand recall, which is 71% for Commonwealth Bank, 39% for HSBC. We then ask customers through an online survey, okay, having told us who you can think of top of mind spontaneously, from those who you can think of, who would you choose as an initial preference? And so what we can see is that there is a significant drop from recall, then down to 11% for CBA and 6% for HSBC. We then give these people a task. We say, okay, we would now like you to go online and to find a home loan provider which meets your needs. And we give them 10 minutes to complete that task. They can go anywhere they want. They can go to aggregators. They can go to research sites, comparison sites. They can go direct to the actual brand sites themselves. And we record everything that they do. And so now what we're seeing is the number of people who have visited the Commonwealth Bank site during this task is 9% in comparison to HSBC, which is 6%. When they have completed that task after 10 minutes, we bring them back in and we say, okay, now we would like to know who you would put into your bucket, your repertoire, or your shortlist in terms of those brands who you may choose for your final provider. And so it's a multiple select question. And so we're starting to see some interesting things happen here in terms of the scores. So where we had HSBC starting off with an unprompted recall of 39%, we can now see that 37% of the total sample, in this case 200 people in each individual program, are saying that they would shortlist HSBC. So that means that something happened on that online journey which prompted people to choose HSBC. They were intercepted, interrupted potentially, and then also communicated to that HSBC is a good option to get, and that's what got HSBC on the shortlist. And so then in comparison to CBA, we're seeing a slightly different story. So there isn't as much of an impact or an increase for CBA as there is for HSBC. And then finally, from that shortlist, we ask, that is 3 to 4 brands that you have chosen that you would consider for your final option. We would now like to know who is the one final option. And we can see that CBA is chosen by 17% of the total sample and HSBC is chosen by 16% of the total sample. So when you consider the proportion of people who recalled at the beginning and the actual amount of people who chose this provider at the very end, HSBC have done a fantastic job, because the conversion from 39% to 16% is the percentage difference is much less than, say, for example, Commonwealth Bank. And so what we want to do is we understand the reasons why HSBC has done so well. And I also wanted to explain to you the approach that we take for the first part of this particular study that we're going through today, and that is the discover component. How easy is it to find you? And so this very busy chart in front of us at the moment is to demonstrate really one key thing. When a group of people or one person starts off and starts looking for a provider online, trying to understand attribution is very, very difficult. So you've got last click, last tail. There are different ways in which we actually pick up what was it that brought a person to our site. And so the different ways in which we measure it through SEO and things like that when it comes to Google. And that creates a complexity for us, because at the moment we have the ability to see those who came to our site, but we don't have the ability to see those who went to a competitor's site and what brought them to a competitor's site. So this view of the whole entire marketplace is not available to us. We can only see the slice of the people who came to visit us. And so in order for us to understand the competitive marketplace, we need to understand what is happening outside of those who just came to us. At a very top level, people start off on a search engine. Maybe 50% of them will use a search engine as a URL because they're lazy or because of habit. And then the other 50% may actually use it as an actual search tool. And so we can see the differences in that between the type of terms that they use, whether they be search terms, brand terms, or comparison terms. And so that's very interesting, because what it also shows us is that the search strategies that people use, many will start off broad and get more and more specific. They research, they refine, they compare, and then they research again. To give you an example, I put Home Loans Australia into the search engine. That then presents me with a comparison site that I can go to. I click on the comparison site, which shows me a list of brands. These brands are now the ones that I can say, okay, I'm going to have a look at these brands plus the ones that I already know. So I've now built up a list of about maybe 6 brands that I'd like to research. Then I go back into the search engine and I start putting in the brand names of the ones that I saw in the comparison, and I start pulling up reviews from people, maybe that are coming up in different review sites, or I might go direct to the brand site. So it's an iterative process. They are learning, evolving, refining, relearning, and that is how they're coming to the point of making their decision. And so when we see what happened with HSBC, if we're looking at the chart on the left-hand side, this idea of who would you prefer before you do research and who would you prefer having done research, having put together a shortlist and choosing one provider, we can see HSBC from initial preference to final preference have increased by 10%. And we can see that Yorkshire Bank in the UK have also increased significantly. And what we can see is that it is the aggregator and people visiting the aggregator which is driving the HSBC score. And so these are the call outs in the text on the chart. 47% of those that visited an aggregator shortlisted HSBC, and 31% of those that didn't visit an aggregator shortlisted HSBC. And so one of the other things which is interesting in this journey of understanding conversions is the number of people who shortlist you, and then the number of people who go on to choose you at your final preference. Those that don't choose you from shortlist to final preference are really your lost opportunities. These are people who had you in their repertoire. You've done the hard work to get into consideration, but you are now side-by-side comparison with somebody else, and you are being ruled out for some reason. And understanding that reason of lost opportunity is key in terms of understanding the reasons why people aren't choosing, and then you can do something about it. On the right-hand side, we've compared some of the figures for CBA as well. I won't go into them in as much detail, but the key point here is that CBA don't rely on the aggregator as much. And in Australia in general, while we are seeing a larger proportion visiting an aggregator for these particular types of studies in terms of seeking out a home loan, there is definitely a different tier structure in terms of the brands that operate within the aggregator environment in comparison to the UK. You will find more of what I suppose you could call the tier 1 brands have a presence in the aggregator, and in Australia that is less likely to happen. So moving on then, and I'm going to go through the next number of slides quite quickly because there's quite a bit of detail here and I really just want to get a key concept across. So when we ask people who would they initially prefer, we ask why. And so understanding at the outset what are the kind of things that are driving the marketplace is very important. So in this particular instance where I'm comparing the UK and Australia, I can see that flexible withdrawal options and providing online member service is very important, or is more important in Australia than it is in the UK. Excuse me. On the right hand side, we can see then I'm just offering some scores in terms of initial preference for some other brands other than CBA and HSBC, because I know that there are people on this call who'd be interested in these kind of scores. So we can see the initial preference, people like Barclays, ANZ, Santander, and Westpac. If I move on to the next slide and I draw your attention to the scores on the right-hand side, we can see that Barclays at 10% have gone from an initial preference to a final preference of 9%. ANZ gone from 16% to 10%. Santander from 16% to 12%, and Westpac from 16% to 5%. So there are two key things that are important here. The first one is that you have done a body of work at initial and preference through branding, previous relationship, things like that, to build, strengthen the customer's mind that they would choose you before they do any research. But what's key is understanding how many of those who choose you at initial preference actually then go on to choose you at final preference. What is your retention of the initial preference? And so what we can see that ANZ are actually retaining a significant proportion of those who are initially preferring them, but because we're seeing such a drop in terms of the initial preference, we're seeing that there are a significant proportion who are also losing. So they are retaining most of the 10% that ANZ have at final preference come from the initial preference. We're not picking up many new people, really is the key point. Whereas Santander in the UK are picking up a lot more people because their 16% to 12% means that they are picking up a number of new people who didn't actually consider them at initial preference. The chart on the left-hand side, another thing that I wanted to call out was the idea of I'm a current customer and I have used them before, and the differences between the United Kingdom and Australia. So one of the interesting things that is coming out from we're looking at different territories is how strong different territories are in the bundling area and share of wallet concept, leveraging existing customers and cross-selling other financial products to them. And so we're seeing in Australia they are more advanced, or certainly there is more of it happening than there is in the scores that we're seeing from the UK. And when we consider the less amount of people using an aggregator for those tier 1 brands, or certainly the tier 1 brands having less presence on the aggregators in comparison to somewhere like the UK, the tools that are available to the brands to retain customers and not actually lose them to competitors is really in the area of making sure that you are leveraging as much existing data that you have on your current customer to offer other products. So you need to have things like predictive analytics. You need to have things where you are anticipating their needs in the future, before they even get them, so that you can give this delightful customer experience, because customer experience really is the background for the future. So what does that mean in home loans? And I apologize for the busy slide in front of us. The point for this particular slide is not for you to actually read all of the information, but really to I'm asking you the question, do you have one of these for home loans in your institution? So these are customer journey maps, and I have a number of different examples in front of us. On the bottom left-hand corner, we've got the airline customer journey map. On the top left-hand corner, we've got this is a European rail customer journey map. And so lots of different types of examples. And knowing the different things that a customer is doing at the different stages when they are researching, choosing, considering, comparing, talking to friends about different options, the different types of touch points they use, the different types of information that's important. All of that is very important when it comes to matching their needs as they move through this journey. And this is particularly important when it comes to understanding the industry in which we are in. So is it one where there is high inertia or low inertia, and are we maximizing the amount of detail that we have on our customers? I wanted to show you one quick example from a bank in Ireland and something that they're doing in the area of home loans or mortgages. And so when you go to their mortgages landing page, you can see that they actually have what you will find on a lot of banking home loan pages in terms of targeting their products to first-time buyer, mover, or switcher. But when you roll over each one of those different funnels, we can see that immediately it starts becoming interactive. And what it does is it loads a tool for me to then actually start to try and match the information to my need before I've even drilled down into that actual page. And so in the center of the screen there, you can see this tool pops up which says, tell us where you are in your first-time buyer journey. It asks me a question. I'm a first-time buyer. I'm now talking about the image on the top right-hand corner. It gives me a number of options underneath that. Where are you in your first-time buyer journey? Saving for a deposit, looking at properties, or found a home. I can click on one of these options and then it creates content and information for me on the basis of where I am in my journey. So it is attempting to be more relevant. And what's interesting in how they do this is how they use calculators and tools within this journey to give me the most appropriate information on the basis of exactly where I am in my journey. And so that's back to this customer journey piece that we were talking about earlier on. And so they are doing some very interesting things in terms of matching to needs. Now, taking a sidestep to a completely different country, very far away from Ireland, looking at New Zealand now and looking at ASB, we're talking about personalisation. And I wanted to just very quickly talk about personalisation from a different type of angle in terms of matching needs. And so ASB are, I suppose, more the web-based personalisation in terms of I visit the site, I leave, I come back, and it represents content and information to me on the basis of what I have seen before. And so one of the things that we have seen coming out in this particular area is when we have people who have visited the site, and I won't go into too much detail on this to explain how we do this, but if you have questions, please come to us afterwards. When we have people who come to the site for the first time, we measure what do they think of the homepage, for example. If they visit more than once, we can also measure what they think of the homepage in the same parameters, and so we're able to see what the differences are between those who have repeat visits and are introduced to the concept of personalization and those who have visited for just once. And so we are seeing that there is an increase in terms of people's perceptions of the homepage and that they are more positive towards it in general if they are a repeat user. But what is interesting though is that a score which you would expect should be much higher is the website offers a clear starting point for information that I expect to find about home loans available doesn't increase significantly for somebody who is a repeat visit. And it should, because it is a personalized journey. And so there are some verbatims there where a first-time visitor and a repeat visitor are talking about their experiences. But really what I want to highlight here is that in terms of homepage design, one of the things that we are definitely seeing when it comes to whether it's with personalization or without personalization, those sites which score the strongest are those who have strong anchored navigation on the homepage, and it's particularly in and around the area of the fold. So I have some scores on the screen. I'm not alluding to these scores are representative of these pages. I'm not saying which one is which, but it is common across all of them that being able to get started easily is providing a clear anchor navigation within the area of the fold and to help people get started very quickly. And that is a critical part when it comes to people being able to find solutions that match their needs. So then moving into the actual home loans landing page, and a lot of the pages that are scoring well here, we can see that they're pages where it's easy for the customer to be able to get started in terms of the different types of offers that are available to them. And so we have a number of different pages here from a number of different places, and these are all offering a similar kind of thing from a navigation point of view. And so I would just say, when it comes to designing these pages, think about the clutter, think about the text, try and make it visual, increase the friction, and reduce the sense of being overwhelmed, and allow people to get there easily. So this is the clickstream of a different personalized experience when it comes to somebody searching for a home loan. And the key thing really here I want to call out is at the beginning of the funnel, we can see that there is a massive distribution in terms of people getting started. And this, dependent on how you're setting up your home loan journey, this is the kind of thing that will happen. So what happens essentially is that in this particular journey, people are getting lost. We have people, a lot of them, starting off with different types of tools in terms of help me choose, help me get started. There's search functionality and things like that. But there aren't maybe 2 or 3 key pathways that they are following. So this key point that I'm raising about the strength of the anchor navigation around the fold is missing. So personalization definitely helps in terms of presenting things which are relevant and presenting content which is relevant. But we need to bear in mind the importance of the anchor navigation when it comes to making sure that people know exactly where they're going and that they don't get lost, and that the clickstream doesn't look like this, which is long and wide. So who is doing this type of stuff, and what are the examples? Well, there are plenty of examples. So sticky navigation as you're scrolling down, ANZ, nationwide tab-based navigation on the page so that you're not actually moving. And then on the right-hand side, this is Chase Bank example in terms of how they're doing it, and the status change, strong status change, so a person knows where they are when they're scrolling down with a sticky nav. And then looking at ING Direct, which scores very well as well, both because they're using tabs, they have a sticky navigation, but then also their color palette for signposting is also very strong. So that's the first section that I wanted to go through. That second section isn't as long, but the story from the first section brings me naturally into the second section. And so this is all of the home loan banks that we benchmarked in 2017 so far, and we still have more studies ongoing, and it gives you an indication of who are the top performers. So I mentioned Commonwealth Bank and HSBC, followed by Nationwide and then ANZ. So we have some New Zealand banks in there, Australian banks in there, we have DBS in there from Singapore and Citibank, and then we have lots of UK banks and Irish banks too. So coming back to this thing that we raised earlier, this is a question of if it was your final provider, why would you choose this provider over any of the others that you were considering? And what I wanted to call out was, I mentioned before brand and reputation and trust or current customer. After brand, reputation, trust and current customer, we start getting into things like best mortgage that meets my needs, options that are easy to understand. So you've got the utilitarian elements of lowest fees, but really this concept of meet my needs, provide me a solution that will give me everything that I need. And those banks that can do that in the best way are the ones that will win, as long as they have the box ticked for all of the other areas in terms of trust, reliability. And so what we have here on screen these are all of the different steps that we measure when we are looking at a home loan provider. So these are all of the different steps that a customer will take when it comes to looking at the options that someone like you will provide. What I've shown here is I've shown the top performer in each one of these different categories across the whole journey, and then the other line is the average across all of the banks that we measure in all of our studies in 2017. And so one of the things which is coming out is that the Australian banks are scoring very, very well. They take top spot in 12 out of the 15 stages measured, while HSBC lead the marketplace in the UK. They do not lead in any stage here, and we are seeing CBA take 3, ING Direct take 4, and Bank West take 3 stages. And this comes across in other studies that we're running in terms of service functionality, that Australia is ahead in many ways in terms of the different types of services, digital services which are being provided to customers, which is very interesting. But things are changing because legislation in Europe with open banking and GDPR is changing the way in which information is going to be available. So watch this space. I think that things are going to get very interesting within the next 12 months. I'd like to talk about learn the product range. I've highlighted it here. ING Direct are leading in this area. And so learning the product range is really about that area of finding a product which matches your needs, finding the best product options, and it being easy to understand. And so I just want to dig into this one a little bit more and the reasons why ING are doing so well. So they show website content and features along with clear terminology. So we have compare home loans called out up front and the tab at the very, very big top of the home page. We have above the tabs above the fold, the focus is on content rather than the value proposition. The click stream is really short and really simple. Many are successful just on the first click, 65%. Others are going to the home loan detail page, not finding the answer, and very quickly coming back and actually getting the answer on the home loan page. And it's the fact that they only really list their range on the home loan page is the reason why their click stream is so short and people are so successful. So they really don't focus too much on the home loans. They focus on the needs that they're going to meet for people who are looking for a home loan. So I'm now going to start comparing the desktop and bringing in mobile as well. But one of the key things that is very powerful for ING Direct is the actual way in which they use their signposting and their labeling. And so the finger-friendly tabs and the color-coded navigation, which carries across desktop and mobile, makes it very easy for people to see, creates friction, and people can quickly navigate through. The other thing as well is that they show pretty much all of the information which is required up front on the home loans page, and that if you drill down, there isn't actually that much more information. They provide as much information as they can up front, and that works very well. And then over on the right hand side on the mobile example, we can see that we're starting to get into the area of matching to needs. So we can start to compare home loans by answering a number of simple questions. And so then we get into this home loan chooser in the mobile journey and easy to understand content that leads the customer through the pathway with collapsible sections. If I click on various different types of options, and it explains to me exactly the information which is available. So ING do very well in terms of matching a product to a customer's needs. Just going around the world and looking at some other examples from some other places very quickly. So Yorkshire Bank do very well in terms of building dynamic filtering, so comparing 3 home loans side by side. They do this with on the page dynamically when you actually load it. So the idea is that they're not taking you out of the journey, not loading another page. It all happens dynamically, and they have this clever tool which we see, there's some health insurance providers that we're seeing using this. People's Choice are using this as well. So we're looking at show the differences or hide the differences when we're trying to compare different types of mortgages which are available. First Direct and NatWet both make it easy in terms of the input fields, which is very important when it comes to mobile devices, being able to use drop downs and quickly be able to find and choose information but not make mistakes. And then First Direct start this find your mortgage for you directly on the home page, and so that you're really starting to get straight into finding the range which is available. And in a moment, for the task of finding a product range, the bank that scores the best in terms of the task is not actually ING Direct. It's a bank in New Zealand, KiwiBank. And one of the reasons why they're so successful is because they include a link to the home loan range directly from the home page. So other things that NatWet are doing is that they're pulling forward key information in terms of what a person might be interested in when it comes to comparing different types of products which are available, but then they're using the actual information architecture and then the ability to slide or drill down to get deeper level information if I want to start to consider different types of products which are available, or different types of home loans which are available. And then First Direct, dynamic interactive comparison on a mobile, where I can compare, again, 3 side by side. And again, to do this on a mobile is very difficult to do it well, and First Direct perform very well for this. Okay, I mentioned how do we measure success beyond usability, and how we do it is the likelihood to buy. question. At the end of a usability task, and in this particular instance, it's to find the product range, we ask people, what is your likely next action? At the top of this ladder, there is the I would buy. I am a very happy customer, potential customer. At the bottom of the ladder is I would abandon and not come back due to the experience that they've just had. Looking at all of the different banks that we looked at providing home loans, the programs that we ran, KiwiBank scores the highest in terms of the likelihood to buy question across all of the banks. And so we wanted to drill very quickly into what it is that KiwiBank are doing that actually leads them to be the bank of all of the programs that customers came out of saying that they would be most likely to buy from immediately. So looking at the task, and this is how we do different types of tasks when analysis, we have things like effectiveness, efficiency. You'll be familiar with a lot of this stuff in terms of usability. We can see how KiwiBank is doing. I've pulled out the competitors that we're looking against in this particular instance, and we can see that they're scoring well along some of the key metrics. I would pull out just to draw your attention to, on the right hand side, product information. They score higher than their competitors here, and this is something then from a features and functions point of view where we just look at what features do they have this, do they have that. KiwiBank are offering features that others are not offering, which is helping them to achieve higher success rate in terms of people completing this task, and then also driving people on to actually say that they would be more likely to actually choose them. So looking very quickly at the KiwiBank clickstream and how people move through, basically one of the key things what actually drove success is that they offer the pathway in two different places and make it very, very clear for people to actually be able to get to the information. So there are more options and opportunities for a person to actually find success. So I can go through personal banking in the top mega menu, or I can also go through options which are just in and around the fold. So we talk about that anchor navigation that we talked about. So home loans or personal banking, and that brings a person through to actually finding the rates and finding the range. Within the features that they're providing that others are not providing, which is leading to success. So a link to the range of the loans is displayed on the home page, range of loans displayed on the product landing page, and contextual FAQs relevant to the loan information. And we are really now getting further than that in terms of offering virtual assistants and chat bots. And we're seeing more of that in many of the industries that we are benchmarking. Okay, so I've really come towards the very end, and I've only really got 2 slides left. The first one is the methodology. I've talked through it. The key components of the methodology: 200 people starting out, quantitative sample, recruited in market looking for a home loan provider. We ask them all of the questions that I discussed in terms of who might they initially prefer, then we ask them to complete a task, and then we bring them back in, and then we ask them who would they shortlist and finally prefer. We then set them tasks on a website, only one website. We don't ask them to complete it on, say, for example, Santander and then go to Nationwide, and that is in order to be able to benchmark. And people are going to a website between 40 and 20, dependent if they're a client or someone who's been chosen as a competitor, and we are essentially benchmarking like for like the same task across the journey. And I also talked about features and functions. We measure 400 different feature and functions criteria on each individual brand. Everything's put together, and that gives us an overall benchmark score, but we also have the commercial components of final preference and things like likelihood to buy, which gives us that harder metric in terms of what is the actual impact of the journey and the customer experience on a person's likelihood to choose this provider. So conclusions and the things that I would like to leave you with in terms of thoughts. Understanding where your prospective and current customers go to meeting their needs and being there is one of them with the most compelling option is very important. So we need to understand the touch points used. So research, social media, aggregator, search engine, and the most important attributes that they are looking for when they're going to these different places is key. This then feeds into this idea of having a customer journey map and understanding the experience when they're going along this journey. So really what we want to be doing is we want to be providing solutions to them which solve their problems on the basis of knowing where they are in the journey and the type of touch points that they're looking to interact with. And really it's really about knowing our customers. Another key one is know why we're losing opportunities. and ensure that we maximize the share of wallet of customers, or our customers' share of wallet, by preempting what they need, which we know we're moving in that area in terms of banking. Still has a good bit to go in terms of personalization. And that's on the services side really more than on the web experience side. But that lost opportunity piece that we were talking about at the very beginning, in terms of people who are shortlisting but not choosing for final preference, and knowing the reasons why and doing something about it. If you're personalizing online journeys, maintain strong anchor navigation with clear signposting. I talked about the reasons for that, why that is very important. Using sticky navs, but if you are using sticky navs, make sure that your status change is clear and simple and to understand, and really don't truncate, because we do see some truncating and it's a bad idea. Customers get lost and then the sticky nav doesn't work. Customers want to know what you have to offer for them to tailor that to their needs. Interactive comparison, dynamic filtering, and strong breadcrumb strategies are key. So the duality of providing them with choice, but at the same time providing, letting a tailoring process of that choice which will match to their needs, is really the key here in terms of providing relevance. So today we had a high-level view of the different types of things that we cover in the programs and how we help our clients. If you became a client, full research would have a tailored analysis at a micro level of very specific points on your journey, and helping you to increase the number of opportunities and reduce that lost opportunity score. You get immediate access to historical data, 2 activization workshops in 2018, and additional advisory hours for deeper research. So if you would like to talk to us about the 2018 program, please do get in touch. I put some contact details on screen in front of you, and Maddie has the presentation deck if anybody would like the presentation deck after this, and then also we have a recording of this particular session. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop for a minute, I'm going to stop the recording, and if anybody has any questions, I'll mute myself and I'll come back on in a minute just to answer those questions. Thank you very much so far though for your time.